Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Catapult Lockdown Virtual Salon. I'm Marsha Pearce, and this afternoon I'm in conversation with Jeana Lindo, an artist based in Jamaica. Now, before we get started, I'd like to express huge thanks to the Catapult partners, including the American Friends of Jamaica, Kingston Creative, and Fresh Milk, for making this series of salons happen. Please feel free to ask your questions in the comment section during the talk. We will get to those later in the Q&A segment. With me is Jeana Lindo. Welcome, Jeana. It's a pleasure to connect with you.
Hi, Marsha. Thank you for having me. Really excited
Uh,
to chat with you today.
so am I. It's been lovely to kind of connect with you over email, but great to finally see you face to face, virtually, and get a conversation going about your work. I thought we would start with your photography, you know, and to link that with a sense of place and to think about what your photography means in terms of how you see Jamaica. You have studied photography at Parsons School of Design in New York, and later you returned to Jamaica. How did living outside of Jamaica impact the way you saw the island, and has moving back influenced your perspective? How have those positions, that insider, outsider, those perspectives affected the way you direct your camera?
When I was away from Jamaica, I was really excited to talk about Jamaica all the time because I just wanted to keep it with me as much as I could. And I thought it's the greatest place ever, and everything is so fun and shiny and sunny. And I still feel that way sometimes. Living in Jamaica has given me a more realistic perspective. You know, people live there and it's not just a place for vacations and having fun all the time. You know, I find that there's this phrase that we tell the tourists, like, no worries.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of worries for everyday people in Jamaica. So
Yeah.
living there, you know, having to hear my friends talk about water lockoffs and always experiencing internet connection issues and issues with electricity, it's like very different from the fantasy land that I had made paintings about before. But still a really lovely place, and I'm really happy to be there to see the mountains and be in the rivers, and the beaches are just incomparable to anything else. So I feel like I really wanted to just tell everybody about all of those experiences by using my camera. So by making videos that combine the images of my friends and
Yeah.
the nature, sometimes doing overlays,
Mhm.
I feel like I can share this overwhelming experience in one thing.
Right. So while you were outside, you felt like you romanticized place a little bit versus actually being in the lived reality of Jamaica.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I want to stay on the subject of identity,
Mhm.
and to maybe consider how place impacts that. You describe yourself as a queer Chinese Jamaican woman, and you've said that people often ask you, where are you from? And I know Jamaica still struggles with discrimination against the LGBTQ community. Being openly gay can trigger visible, expressions of intolerance. How have you engaged ideas of disguising and revealing same-sex interactions in your work?
So I first realized that I was secretly putting these ideas in the work when I was interested in showing images of female friendship, and I wanted to have all of these girls hugging and being really close to each other, holding hands. And it was like, are they best friends or are they in love with each other? We don't know. And then being purposeful with it as well, doing portraits where it usually would be like a seated man and a woman standing behind him, but this time it's two women. So, like, playing upon traditional ideas. So something that is not explicitly sexual, but it's that there is an intimacy there with the way that the people are interacting with each other.
Are there some images that we can share, that
Yes,
we can talk about the work?
I think the third picture, there's like a pink background, the picture that I sent you.
The second image, I think, Philip. If we can get that going.
Oh, not that one.
The second one, the one before, I think.
Yes, this
Yeah,
one.
this one.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about this. Tell us a little more about these images.
So in the top left image, there's these two girls holding hands and laughing. And I had all of these scrap fabrics that I used for the background for this image. I just wanted it to be really soft and smooth to show the femininity of Black women. And the portrait I was trying to make was just about Jamaican aesthetics. I asked them to bring things with the red, green, and gold, and they came through, you know. And I really like the perspective of them laying down, so I do that a lot in my portraits. And I was really happy with this image because when I had them hold hands, like they were like, "Oh, this is kind of gay," and I was like, "But this is what I want it to be." And you know, this is a genuine laugh, like because they're kind of making fun of me as well in the studio, and they actually have both come out as queer individuals. So that was actually pretty funny as well,
That
looking
is
back at it.
interesting. Yeah. Um,
So that was in New York when I was in Parsons.
uh-huh.
And the other two pictures, there was the one that was like the portrait I described with the seated and standing woman.
Yeah.
And then I really liked the caress on the cheek in that closer beauty portraits. So those are three different photo shoots.
It's really interesting that the photography kind of works, on that line between, as I was talking about, kind of masking and revealing. And it's really interesting to hear that, the subjects in the portrait were kind of pushing back against, the gestures and the positioning in the piece,
Mhm.
and they themselves, are connected to that identity. Why is laying down very important for you in your photos? You just mentioned that that's a sort of a go-to position for you.
I think that it is very vulnerable, and I'm trying to express that always in my portraits. You know, I want the subject to be more vulnerable and also me. So it's like I treat the photo shoots as a date. I ask my subjects about their life and if they have siblings and what it is they like to do, what kind of music they like, and I play the music that they most enjoy so that they can be very comfortable and we can have the intimacy in the images be sort of real because then now we're closer. And I would shoot a lot of strangers, just people that I think maybe we met somewhere on the street and they're beautiful and I want to show what they look like. And so we just have an adventure in the studio by making pictures. And especially when I photograph men, they often do this pose with their arms
Yeah.
crossed over their chest. And
Uh-huh.
I am like, literally open up, show your chest, let me see, you know, your body and be somebody that's not hiding. Sometimes they also do like this pose where they have their hands in front of their face, which again is a mask. So I'm trying to, with their when they're laying down, it reminds me of like these bedroom portraits where someone is laying down and looking directly into the eyes of the photographer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really romantic, and I like that.
It really sets up an incredible sense of intimacy, and I think gives your subject their own sense of agency once they're able to open up and be themselves.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great segue for us to talk about how you've used your photography. You've done a lot of fashion editorial work, and I want us to talk about how that intersects with activism and, in fact, considering vulnerable groups. And so you've collaborated with Imani, the genderless stylist. I'd love to hear about that project, and how you have used photography and fashion and style to push against dominant narratives of marginalized people in society.
The shoot with Imani was really incredible because there were all these fantastic individuals coming together to make these images, and Imani was the creative director. She had a vision, and we executed it. It was actually a really difficult day for me because I had to pay for the studio before I got the money from the photo shoot people. And so I was like on my last. But I had to keep up a good face because I had not met Imani before. And so I had to be my best self. The lady who ran the studio, she had a child who was like crying all day. So it was a very like noisy situation. And there was like 5 of them and me and the makeup artist. And it was a small studio. But I was dedicated to helping Imani achieve her dream. And so I tried to, just focus it. And we had this red background and the glam makeup. And I felt like everybody felt like a star, so that was really fun for me. And
Mm-hmm.
she wanted to, focus on trans rights, showing them as glamorous and fabulous as they feel inside and how they do present themselves sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the subjects was actually not trans. He's simply a gay man, but he said that he cares about Imani and wanted to help her again achieve her vision.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the one with the red sunglasses, and he looked really
Okay.
cool.
Perhaps
And
we can pull that image up so we can talk about it as well. Yeah, great.
yes, so we just worked with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I really love the image of the person on the left with the big earring. Her name is Kim,
Uh-huh.
and I find that the looking over the shoulder pose is one that is very elegant.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
as we were working on this, I saw the images in a magazine, and the pictures were actually for a magazine for a queer arts festival.
Okay.
And the image in the center, that's Imani. And this feathers in her body is was her idea. And the image was so strong, they actually chose it to be the cover of the magazine.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is an incredible photograph, that really exudes the strength and confidence in the work. Um, how do you think about photography's role in challenging norms, challenging the status quo in terms of identity?
I think that it's very important. I'm really excited about the era that we live in where
Mm,
photography is so much more accessible, that people have cameras on their phones and that cameras can be cheaper as well, because then people who had gone unseen can now be seen. They can make their own images by taking the picture themselves, or we can collaborate, like in this case.
yeah. Hmm.
And so there's no more hiding because the people who want to be seen can find a way to show themselves. It's not that the uh, smaller group of photographers who are in power are in control. Now everybody can be in control of their image, is what I mean.
Hmm. Yeah. And do you think, as someone who identifies as queer, and who uses photography in her practice, that that is particularly important for you?
Yes, it's really great to have been able to showcase my friends of different gender identities and
Hmm.
expressions with my photography
Hmm.
wherever I've been.
Yeah. So the camera becomes, an extension of, your way of seeing.
Yeah, and storytelling. I used to work at the newspaper when I was in high
Hmm.
school in Florida. And so I was to look for stories everywhere that I went, and I've carried that philosophy as I've gone on. So definitely felt like I was telling the news of all the people that I see in my travels with my
Right.
photography.
Oh, that's wonderful. Um, and what do you think about, how do you feel about fashion? You've done so much work in fashion photography. What do you think about the place of fashion and style in terms of asserting who we are?
It's also extremely important in showing who we can be. And again, we live in a really great time where fashion is more accessible. People can buy fabrics from all over the world. They can print their own fabrics even. I was able to print my own fabrics for a project that I did
Hmm.
about being Chinese Jamaican. Maybe we can show that picture too.
Yeah, we can get to that when we
So,
talk about.
yeah. One
Go
of
ahead.
my one of my favorite designers is a man named Burchell Egerton, and
Hmm.
he has a brand called Africlin. So it's like Africa and Brooklyn, and it used to be called Made in Africlin. It might still be called that. And he mixed African wax prints with athletic wear, so like neoprene, but then also this cotton wax print. And it would be a jacket. And so you would have this mix of colors and prints. And it was like a person in an urban environment wearing something that is so colorful and different from those black trench coats that people would wear like in New York
Right.
City. And
Hmm.
so I've followed him for many years and taken lots of pictures of the different clothes that he's made. And so
Hmm.
when you say, how does fashion bolster someone's identity, that's definitely someone that comes to mind.
Thank you for that. And it's lovely because I want to talk about the African part of your identity. And I want to be able to connect that with something you just shared in terms of your interest in storytelling. You know, you've explored the African layer of your heritage and the idea of Caribbean resilience in your Anansi project.
Yes.
How has this work been instrumental in considering a sense of self and a sense of place?
Oh, it was so important to me. It was really helpful in giving me that strength to stand firm in my Jamaican identity and be able to share with everyone for many days that I am Black and proud and that our history is something that we need to hold on to. I was really happy that my friends would say, "Oh, I remember the Anansi stories." And then I could say, "Yes, we need to tell them more." So I did it for my thesis project when I was graduating from Parsons. So when I said for many days, it's that as of my thesis project, I was working on it for the whole year. And so anytime anyone would ask that question, what are you working on? I could be able to talk about it.
Hmm. Could you take us through some, the motivation to do that work?
So when I was visiting Jamaica around Christmas time, my auntie was telling me that John Canoe parades have kind of died out because it's like less popular and it's kind of expensive to do it. And I thought that was such a shame. And I thought about how oral tradition is very important and that I definitely would want to do something regarding that for my thesis project. And I told my grandma that this is something I cared about. So she introduced me to her friend, Amina Blackwood Meeks, a famous
Hmm.
storyteller. And I was able to sit down with her for a few hours at the house and record her telling me some stories. And she was really excited about Anansi because that's a subject that she really loves. And what I was interested in when she told me the Anansi stories was that Anansi's character has been misrepresented. He's usually seen as like a fool. It's like Anansi and his antics, but really Anansi is clever. He's trying to overcome things, you know? And so I chose to tell stories where like Anansi doesn't always win because it's not that his trickery is successful and then you're teaching kids to be bad, but that you can use your intellect to overcome the challenges that face every day. So I took the stories and made a book, and my project was to create illustrations that go along with some of the stories in the book. So my goal was just to do as many as I could. There were very large collages. Can we pull up some of them now? And
Yeah, I think we have an image from the book.
yes.
Hmm.
So
The one
that's my
before,
dress.
the image before. There we go.
Yes. So
Thank
this
you.
this is one of the images that I put into the book.
Mm-hmm.
So the storybook has many stories, and then some of the pictures go along with the stories. So what I mean is I was able to make about 4 images, and then there's more than 4 stories in the book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I wanted it to be really dynamic. I was actually tired of photography at this point. And so I wanted to do painting only for my thesis, and the school was like, "No, you can't do that. You studied photography all these years." So I found a compromise and made this project where I made costumes and I built sets. And this particular image, I actually had a box that I painted all on the inside, and
Mm-hmm.
I printed out photos. So these are 2 photos of one model wearing some masks that I made,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a Nancy and Turtle greeting each other in the forest. And the image of the bougainvillea is one that I painted in my sketchbook, and then I scanned it, and then I cut it out and printed it. And so the black background is actually the scanner because the image was so big it couldn't like fit on the scanner. But I was really happy with this one in particular because of the box and the 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 figures standing, the many
Mm-hmm.
layers that it has, the
And so
depth.
you've used photo collage to reimagine or to interpret, visualize some of these Anansi stories that you've curated in the book.
Yeah.
How do you how do you think these images, you know, offer a different aesthetic or a different approach uh, to what we know about Anansi and perhaps what we understand about Caribbean islands?
I think that the use of the human figures with the illustrations gives you another layer of imagination, as the
Mm-hmm.
other Anansi story images that I've seen have been some collage, straight collage, or watercolor paintings, but I've never seen anything like this that I've made. So it
Mm-hmm.
reminds me of a play and theater, which is something that is another tradition that we honor in Jamaica, and makes me think of pantomime and how it's a big, big production. So
Yes. Yeah, you're so right. I did have that in the back of my mind. It allowed me to kind of really recall a stage experience. And so you said that you had your characters, you had models, sort of were they on stage and they dressed in costumes and so that you designed?
yes, so my friend that I mentioned earlier, actually, Bertrell, with the Made in Africa stuff, he had helped me with some of the clothes. Like he donated
Mm-hmm.
some pants, and then there is a backpack jacket that he had made for one of the images that I did of Anansi and the turtle. So a different image of Anansi and the turtle. So
Mm-hmm.
it is a turtle shell, and it
Yeah.
has all these scraps of cloth. And so I had the models in the studio space. And for that one with the jacket, actually, the studio space was my apartment because it had a big dining table. And so I brought all of the studio equipment to the apartment and set up there to take that particular image.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're bringing together oral traditions or traditions of theater, the theater,
Mhm.
um, as well, of course, the visual, and really sort of creating this fresh amalgamation for us.
Yeah.
That's wonderful, Gina.
Mhm.
But that Anansi project is not the only book that you've done, and I'm really interested in learning more about why books are a key part of your practice. There's another book, for example, that you produced entitled Elegant Black Ladies. So, what prompted that particular book project? And please tell me, what keeps the book a key part of your work? Why do you continue to explore the book as a format in your practice?
I really like books because I fell in love with reading at a young age, and we used to go to the library and borrow as many books as I could. Once I learned that you could borrow up to 50 books, and we borrowed 50 books and had boxes and kept them in the house until we finished reading all of them. And I used to hide my books under my bed. When it's time to sleep, but I was reading.
I can
And
totally relate. Yeah.
yes, so I find that books are really great ways to share information. And when I was studying photography, I really fell in love with print and seeing my images in physical form.
Mm-hmm.
So the teachers were always really excited about photo books because that's a tradition that they are used to.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them had their images in magazines. So again, they were really into arranging photos in a book. So I learned from them. And then in my senior year, I took an elective on bookmaking. So that was even greater.
Yeah.
And so Elegant Black Ladies, I did in 2015. And if you could pull up picture number 8,
I don't think we have that one. I don't think we have a
or
picture of elegant
it
black
might
ladies.
be it might be number 5 to you, but I titled it 8 when I sent it.
You can go
So
ahead and tell us about it.
yes, so it is about, again, I was interested in sharing the femininity of Black women. I find that they've been represented as tough and not as beautiful, which is so wrong because we are amazing. And so I called upon my all of the Black women that I had in my phone. And I said, "Would you like to participate in a photo shoot? And we can just do it in the park and you can just wear whatever makes you feel pretty." And so my teacher had told me to do a project about whatever feels most urgent to you. So that is why I had reached out to my friends, because I said, well, what's really important to me is to share these images of beautiful Black people. So a lot of my friends got back to me, and I was able to organize photo shoots with many of them. And we had the sakura blossoms from the park, and we had all of these, pink flowers surrounding them. And again, I
Mm-hmm.
wanted everyone to be laughing and smiling. And I created some friendship images of women, and this time it was really just about being friends.
Yeah.
And so I brought together some girls that didn't know each other, but then made it seem like they did know each other for a long time. Like there's an image that I have of these two girls sitting under a tree, and there's flower petals everywhere, and they're just like looking at a flower and smiling, and they just look so soft and nice. And that's really what I wanted to have with this image. That's why I called it Elegant Black Ladies. And it's just a photo book. That one is only photos, but in the beginning of the book it says, "To all my princesses blessed with pigments," and
Beautiful.
at the end of the book, it says, "You are loved."
And that remains urgent, particularly in this time that we are in. The pandemic, has really cast a light on a lot of the injustices, the inequalities, and of course, the Black Lives Matter movement across the globe. And so, thinking about ideas of representation and certainly, ensuring that there are positive images of Black
Yes,
bodies and Black women is
indeed.
so important. And so I really appreciate, I just wanted to hear more about that project in particular because I felt it resonated so much with this current moment that we are in, you know.
Yes, yes. I find that people are very focused on pain and our pain, and they make money off of it. And there's no need for that right now, or maybe ever. Well, not never, but I just felt like there was enough of that. So I made a dedicated effort to have positive images of us in my work throughout the years that I've been taking pictures. I didn't want to depict Black suffering anymore.
Mhm.
So when I do the portraits, I'm very interested in seeing my friends laughing and smiling and showing the complexity of us, because we're not just people who are sad.
Or overly sexualized, in
Yes,
terms of looking at how the female body, the Black female body, has been represented in the media again and again.
yeah, because actually that is why I wanted so many different kinds of women in my book.
Mhm.
Because when they say we love Black women, it might be like an oiled up bikini lady. And she might be the same kind of body that we always see praised as beauty queens, really tall and thin, or something like that. And I was like, that's not realistic. And that doesn't make everyone feel beautiful. So I asked them to wear what makes them feel beautiful so that they can have more control of their image. I wanted them to, decide on their wardrobe and
Mhm.
show the broad range of expressions, because there's some girls in like big skirts and some of the girls showed up in like dresses and some people were wearing pants.
Mhm. Mhm. No, thank you for that, Gina. We've talked a bit about, the African side of your heritage, but I'd love to hear about the Chinese part of who you are. Um, and of course, that really has special implications for a number of islands in the Caribbean. I mean, the history of Jamaica includes a number of anti-Chinese riots in the years 1918, 1938, 1965. Do you see being Chinese and being Jamaican as identities that are at odds with each other? Tell me about navigating this hyphenated identity in your work, being Chinese Jamaican.
Well, I didn't think of it as something that was in conflict because I have a very big family. So there's so many of us. I know at least 200 Chinese Jamaican people. And they have always loved me and I have always loved them. And my maternal grandmother is Chinese Jamaican. So she looks totally Chinese, but she speaks patois. And she loves to cook Jamaican food. And so I made this dress, which is the image we were looking at, but then we weren't ready for it. But it's there. And I had all of these scraps of fabric that I put different illustrations on
Mm-hmm.
to make a sort of language around being Chinese Jamaican, because it's like it's easy to say what Rasta looks like with the colors and hairstyles and outfits. But when you look for Chinese Jamaican, maybe you don't have a particular image except for someone like me, hopefully, someone that has brown skin. But then my eyes, are different,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
so I have koi and I have a portrait of my grandma and a portrait of me on the front of this dress.
Yeah, I think we can see
And
that.
yes, and I did coconuts and I had yam and mango. And I had what I did was I made a list of all the things that I felt were related to this identity. And I tried to make a picture for each of them. So there's palm trees as well. And one of my favorite images here is in the bottom left of the screen, you can see a mountain scene.
Yes.
And so this is like the Blue Mountains in Jamaica, but the clouds are swirly like in Chinese traditional art.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to put these things together and make a Chinese Jamaican image.
But there's something very special about this, and coming from Trinidad, a place of carnival, it seems to me like you've referenced carnival in some way, and perhaps even it feels reminiscent of Chinese dragon aesthetic. So maybe you can tell me a bit about that. Have those influenced the work in any way?
Yes. So the shapes are like scales, like of a dragon or a fish creature. And the outfit is inspired by Carnival. There's a character in John Canoe in a
Mhm.
parade in Jamaica named Pitchy Patchy, and he's got all of these scraps of fabric covering him from head to toe. So I
Mhm.
definitely wanted this dress to be very long to reference that.
We have the
And
Peregrinade in Trinidad.
what is
That's
it called in
made
Trinidad?
the Peregrinade in Trinidad that has all of these swatches of fabric that are stitched together.
Ah, that's cool. I love how our cultures are so similar because we are all related.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But I like that you've been able to take, these components to really, um, attempt to articulate who you are in this format. I like that you said that, we may be able to picture or envision a Rasta or someone else from Jamaica, but to think about what Chinese Jamaican looks like or Chinese Caribbean looks like, um, this is an interesting presentation, a representation of who you are, and certainly multi-layered, multi-dimensional. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Oh,
And you perform this on the beach as well, and so I would love to hear about the significance of doing this performance, and particularly at the water's edge?
Yes, well, I did this. I caught a horrible cold after this, actually. It was freezing. Um, but I did this in Coney Island Beach in New York, and the shore is really important for a reference to our ancestral traumas of being carried through the waters. So I definitely wanted to be at the beach, even though it was the middle of winter, December in New York.
Oh my.
So I recorded myself dancing in the water, waving my hands above my head and moving with the water because we're connected, and jumping and splashing about, trying to smile, even though it was very cold.
Mhm.
Spinning around. And the spinning, I said that the circles in my movement were about cycles of life as well, and, relating to the generations and our life carrying on.
That's wonderful. That's really incredible. And I like that you put a lot of thought into where this work might be performed and the significance of the sea continues to play in the work of many Caribbean artists.
Mhm.
I wondered if we could perhaps sort of extend that thinking, this idea of what it means to be Chinese Jamaican, this sort of hyphenated sense of being, to think about the range of media with which you work. You work in painting, photography, video. Do you keep these media forms separate, or do you put a hyphen between them? Do you see a dialogue between the various media that you're working with? Are they as mixed and complex as you are?
Yes, I think that sometimes I really want to put all of the media together, and I will make a video that includes me painting physically, and you might hear me singing or reciting poetry, so that my words and my paint and my images all come together. And sometimes they should remain separate, like a painting that is just a painting, because the idea that is expressed through the medium best lives that way. Like in
Mhm.
photography, my teacher would say, why would you print all of the images small? Because the person wants the pictures to be small, but maybe one of the images in the series belongs as a large print. And so I look at the work and see, like, what does it want? How should it live in the world?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I appreciate that attention to the hybridity, the possibilities for hybridity in the work, as well as understanding there are moments where some aspects need to come to the fore, to have their moment, and then to sort of, I guess, step back into, um, that amalgam that makes sense. Jeana, thank you so much. It's been incredible speaking with you and getting to tease out aspects of your work. I'd love to take some questions now, if you can open up for Q&A. Philip, perhaps you can share the first question, if there are any. From Annalie, I enjoy the hybrid nature of your art practice and wonder how you find moving back and forth between these different disciplines.
I think that it's a joy. One day I can be doing a photo shoot all by myself in my backyard, and then the next day I will be painting a shirt and being very precise with it. While the day before in my personal photo shoot, I was happy to make mistakes because I was just letting the camera go as I dance and hope that it catches me.
Hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Is there another question? Author Girl 44. How was your connection to Jamaican culture and heritage in your work perceived in a US setting? And conversely, how was your work being received locally since retailing?
Well, I find that sometimes people really love it, and sometimes people don't understand where I'm coming from.
Mm.
But it's always an effort that I take joy in to educate people.
Mhm. Mhm.
So they might be like, For my thesis project for the Anansi storybook, I wanted to present the work with a tree as the installation. And I felt like this is a great reference to storytelling because we sit under trees and we tell stories. And my professor was like, I don't understand the tree. Like, how is it related? And I was like, what do you mean? But I just had to,
Right.
be like, look, this is what it is. And in Jamaica, I feel like people really like the work that I've been doing. I really always try to bring something fresh and new, and I observe what others in the scene are doing and, want to do something that we haven't seen before. So
Mhm.
I think it's been great.
Thank you, Author Girl, for your question. We have Rachel. Has COVID had any significant impact on your work? What have you done to adapt?
Yes, COVID has prevented me from going outside to see people. Like taking pictures of strange people, for example, is not something that would be advised. In Jamaica, I live with my grandparents, so I'm definitely thinking about them all the time. And COVID being inside has affected my work also in a positive way because I've been able to focus on my painting more. I have more time to myself to just paint as much as I can. I try to do a new artwork every day. As for my Instagram, I try to have it be like if I post a picture of my face, I have to have like two other pictures after it. So then that forces me to have an artwork that would go in the grid. So I'm always doing things.
Mhm. 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 Do we have another question? Uh, we have a comment from Annalie. The character we were talking about, that piece you did to explore your Chinese Jamaicanness, and Annalie says, so the character is Pitchy Patchy in Jamaica, Para Grenade in Trinidad, and Shaggy Bear in Barbados, a trans-Caribbean character who shifts across the region. Yeah, and I think that's, thank you for that, Annalie.
I like that.
Yeah. Bim Vibes says, are you currently working on anything new? Where can we find your work?
Yes, I'm working on clothes with my prints on them. So I've been designing fabrics with pineapples and mangoes, and I love fruits. So I bought these earrings from somebody online because I just like really love mangoes. And so when I can sew well, then you will see the clothes. For now, I have the patterns and I've got the fabric, so I'm just in a learning period. You can see my work at my Instagram. I actually have two. It's Love You Like Mango, and there's also Jeana Lindo photo. So for more pictures of me, there's Love You Like Mango, and for what I try to choose as my best works, I suppose, is Jeana Lindo photo. And my website is gina-lindo.com.
Wonderful. Do we have another question? I think I'm seeing one there in the comments. Catherine is asking, are there other African or Caribbean folklore characters that you know of or would be interested in incorporating into your practice aside from Anansi?
I was interested in looking into some of the scarier characters like River Mama or Rolling Calf, but I also don't like scary things. But I had an idea about like an encyclopedia of duppy stories and doing illustrations of these in like pen. Like how they have books with pictures of dragons and elves and goblins, but then with only Caribbean creatures. I thought that would be very interesting.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you. And we have another question from Annalie. Annalie is asking, can you also speak about the experience of making work about the queer body and how it's received in the US versus in Jamaica?
Well, when I did the photo shoot with Imani,
Mm-hmm.
I thought it made sense to do it in the studio because of the output that she wanted. We needed it to be in a controlled environment with the bright lights and everything. But when I spoke to someone about the shoot the next day, she had said, "Well, they couldn't have ever done this to shoot anywhere except the studio because they would have been in danger." And because I am not a trans person, I wouldn't think about that danger in my everyday. So that was a surprise to me, but my friend was right. Uh, that's not a shoot that we could do on the street. While in America, I definitely could do a shoot like that on the street. Actually, had assisted one of my friends for a shoot for Nylon magazine, and we were in a gay district in New York. And we were outside of a gay bar, and there was a drag queen who saw us doing the photo shoot with these men with makeup on their faces, and she was happy to see us and greeted us. And there was such a totally different experience. We were in the daylight, we were in the sun, and everybody was looking fabulous in their soft fabrics and their glitter on their eyes and stuff. And yeah, so it's totally different. Um, but we adapt, and I think that we have come a long way. We still have a lot of work to do regarding rights and freedoms for queer people in the Caribbean. But I have a lot of friends in Kingston who are queer and proud to be themselves, and I won't say unafraid, but they're definitely brave and I really admire them. So that's something that I could never have imagined when I was growing up, and I'm really excited about that now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jeana. Don't know if we have any more questions, but you mentioned just now, your work on patterns for textiles and that you'll be referencing fruits and so on. Um, and I wanted to hear a little bit more about that. How are you interpreting these items that have often played a part in stereotyping, this
Hmm.
space, the region? So how do mangoes and and all, the fruits that we love so much, how are you reconfiguring those or thinking about them afresh for these textiles that you're working on?
So I'm trying to bring in the shapes and the ideas of fruits that are not as common. So
Mm,
including Otiti apple or rose apple into the artwork, and soursop and sweetsop, and these fruits that we know and love, but other people might have never seen before.
mhm,
And like in the Anansi project, there is a vest that I had made with Aki all over it. And that is actually something that is like the beginning of this idea of my fruits line. Since I had come up with the Aki vest, I wanted to do the clothes with the fruits on them because I was really excited to share with everyone that Aki is a fruit that we eat and that this is something that is new to them and that they can learn about. Because when I was designing a print, when I made that Aki vest, I had gone through a magazine and I saw all of these floral prints and they were kind of boring to me. And I saw like strawberries and cherries and I was like, but what about the guava and what about passion fruit? So that's what this is for me, is to
mhm.
share more of what we know with everybody else.
Thank you. I'm seeing one more question from Author Girl. Uh, Author Girl asks, are you connected to a wider community of emerging Caribbean artists both locally and across the region?
Yes, I would think so. Since being in Jamaica, I've met a lot of artists from different islands who have been in Kingston doing residencies or special projects, and then they've gone home or they've gone to America to continue to expand their work. And I follow them online, and I'm excited to see all the different things that they come up with. And it was really special to hear them talk about their ideas while we were in Jamaica, and definitely met some of them while I was in New York. So it's just always expanding. When I was in Jamaica, I did a video project for a artist from London. I was an assistant on that project, and my friend had been the director. And so everything that this Jamaican artist from London does now, I'm also seeing whenever he posts something. So we're just always supporting one another. Yes.
So we're getting close to time. Are there any sort of closing thoughts from you, Jeana? Anything that you would like our audience to take away regarding your practice?
Well, I would love to show a little bit of that first video that I sent you guys.
Sure.
And I think that that is like my thesis for myself. When you asked the question, where are you from? How do I show that emotionally? I thought that this video was really representative of that because I chose intimate moments amongst strangers and friends when I was editing this video, and it also shows all of the different places that I've been. So it was for a competition, and the prize was to be a tour guide in New York City. However, I did not win, but I'm still really happy with this video clip.
Let's have a look.
So over the clip, I was reciting a poem about how I had been climbing waterfalls and tasting all the fruits that life has to offer, and that I'm just really happy with everything that I've been experiencing so far, and that I'm excited to share that with the viewers. That's me dancing in front of a projector. So this is my work, yes.
There
That's me
you
in the
are,
backyard.
unapologetically yourself.
Yeah.
No, no, I think that is a fitting place for us to wrap up our conversation. It really kind of speaks to your spirit and the things that influence you, interest you. Thank you so much, Jeana. It's been so
Thank you,
lovely,
Michael.
meeting you and speaking about your practice. To our audience, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you.
Everyone.
Please remember to tune in again at 4 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time this afternoon for my discussion with Jamaican visual artist, another Jamaican artist, Esther Chin. In closing today's salon, I'd like to once again express huge thanks to the Catapult partners, the American Friends of Jamaica, Kingston Creative and Fresh Milk for making this incredible series of salons a possibility. Again, everyone, thank you so much, and it's been a pleasure. I'll see you later.
Thank you so much.